Nope. Okay. Sorry, just a moment. I'm going to reload my Medico window.
All right. Oh, so many windows.
Okay. That. Okay. Fantastic. Yep. Everything's working. Do that. And just so folks have it, I'm going to post the notes link into the chat. So.
I don't know if it's me or you, but you are really soft.
Yeah, it could be me. Hold on, let me check my sources. How's that? Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Paul.
Sort of changing gears here, and I somehow there's more things to put in place when it's on Meetecho, and I'm used to doing these on Zoom, which is no excuse. I know Meetecho is our tool, but that's the way it is. Well, I think it is 11:02. We should probably go ahead and get started. Greg has posted the notes into the tracker, notes page. And I don't know if you want to post it again for Paul, or Paul, if you found it.
I think a feature of Meetecho is that you can actually scroll back and see the chat history, but I'll do it again, so it's handy.
I think I'll see if I can turn my volume up for you, Greg.
Not.
Drew, why don't you speak so I'll see if it's my volume or Greg that I'm struggling with.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay. You're loud and clear for me, Greg.
Also, I could see the.
As a former IEEE colleague would say to me, from the diaphragm. So on that note, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the EODIR meeting, virtual interim meeting. Thank you all for participating. We have a pretty informal agenda for today, mostly for brainstorming. Feel free to join the video if you like. We've traditionally done these on Zoom, so you could kind of have the whole gallery, and because these are more like roundtable discussions than a standard working group, but we have switched over to Meetecho as part of IETF infrastructure. So with that, the first agenda item is introductions. I don't remember if, well, anyway, the first agenda item is introductions. Greg and Derv and I are all co-leads of the, go ahead, Greg.
sorry, I'm happy to do introductions first, but I definitely want to provide the opportunity to bash the agenda so folks can
Oh, yeah, that's very true.
maybe as we do introductions, if folks have stuff they want to add to the agenda or questions about it, we can add that into the introductions. So
Right. So yes, do we have any agenda bashing? Okay.
maybe not.
So I will start with introductions for two reasons. One, I'm Karen O'Donoghue. I'm one of the co-leads of the Education and Outreach Directorate. The other thing I did want to point out, I haven't posted this on the mailing list yet, but I am no longer with the Internet Society. I do plan, at least in the near term, to continue doing these types of activities in the IETF. But I haven't posted update contact information and those kinds of things yet. But I just kind of wanted this group to know that. And then we'll just go around the table. Folks want to speak up and introduce themselves. Dhruv?
Hi everyone, I'm Dhruv. Along with Karen and Greg, I'm your EODIR chair. I'm also on the IAB, and in the IAB recently, I've also become the outreach coordinator for the IAB and thinking about the outreach from the leadership role. Of course, that works very well with the EODIR outreach charter as well. So we will continue to coordinate between the two activities. And happy to be here, hoping for a very good discussion today.
Greg?
There is a delay with
sorry.
me to, so yeah, thanks. Yeah, Greg Wood with the IETF Administration LLC, also EODIR co-chair, and yeah, excited that folks joined today. And I'll pass it off to Andrew, who I think is the first in the list on Medica.
Have I unmuted successfully? Fantastic. Well, yeah. Hi everyone, Andrew Campling, enthusiastic IETF participant. Oh, do I need to say somebody else?
No, go.
Randomly.
I can go.
Oh, go on. Okay.
I'll save you, Andrew. Hopefully, I am also unmuted successfully. I'm Michelle Cotton, and I am with the Secretariat, providing some support and also providing support for the new participant activities. So, looking forward to a good discussion today.
Avery, did you want to introduce yourself? Actually, go ahead, Lee Berkeley.
Everyone, I'm Lee Berkeley Shaw. I'm the Director of Development for the IETF LLC, and eager to find ways for us to have the IETF reach more people. Excited to be here.
Excellent. Paul?
Sorry, I guess my listing of participants is different from everybody else. I'm Paul Wouters. I'm currently at a security AD, so part of the IESG, and I'm here partially because I care about new people and younger people at IETF, and also to make the leadership more approachable to new people.
Thank you. So we have three more people on the call. I don't want to put you on the spot. So if you would like to unmute yourself, I will pause and give you an opportunity.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Mark. I'm with the UK Department for Science, Innovation and Tech. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of interested in IETF outreach and kind of building understanding of the IETF's work, particularly with kind of policy communities. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah. Excellent. 2 more. Does either of you want to speak? All right. With that, we will move on. The second item is activity reviews and updates. We're going to go, we didn't solicit these in advance. We were going to let folks speak to them more dynamically, I guess I would say. And because I know that she's got everything completely in order, I don't know, Michelle, if you want to start with newcomer, like what are the, you know, overarching, if you have any newcomer updates to give us. New participant updates. You might want to unmute yourself.
So sensitive. Can you hear me now? Yes. We are underway with all of the new participant activity planning for 118. We hope to have all of the usual sessions, the overview, the quick connections, the social event for new participants in IESG, IAB leadership on Thursday. I am in the process of scheduling, which is quite important for new participants, are the test MEDICO sessions prior to the IETF meeting. So we're going to be doing those 2 weeks prior to IETF 118. Gives new participants a chance to test out MEDICO, understand how it works, since it's such a big part of the way we work, and also gives them an opportunity to ask questions. So starting next week, we'll be doing a lot of the messaging that have signed up for the meeting. And I think that's probably a good brief update to start us off with. Any questions for me?
Go ahead, Andrew.
I know you try really hard to educate people on this, but I would say it's worth constantly trying with the working group chairs, and in particular the IRTF chairs, some of whom seem to be routinely surprised at every meeting that MEDICO is being used, let alone how it might work. Yeah, as I appreciate it's a tough task, but persevering that I think would be beneficial for them and therefore other participants if you can possibly get their interest.
I guess that brings up a question, Greg. Do we have another MEDICO test session that we're going to do in addition to just for new participants?
Yeah, so we don't. And the reason that we don't is because every time we've tried it before, nobody shows up. But it is definitely the case that, especially on the first days of IETF meetings, that chairs, even experienced chairs, seem surprised about how MEDICO works. The other thing I'll note is that this time MEDICO is going to be deploying their new interface, which they trialed at the last IETF meeting. So we are going to be making a special effort to encourage chairs to try out MEDICO at least once before the meeting begins. And the difference is that chairs can schedule their own, basically their own test sessions in MEDICO, which is actually a better way for chairs to do it, because then when they do that, they actually get to play the role of chair in the session, which allows them to try out all the different tools. So the plan is to make a special effort to reach out, as you said, especially to research group chairs, and to provide a short little script for them to follow so that they can be more familiar with all the features. So yeah, so it's a good point. Outreach is sometimes to people you already know, and we'll definitely be doing that for 118.
One question on just a thought that popped into my head, because I have great sympathy for working group chairs who show up and struggle on the first day. you haven't used it in 3 or 4 months, you're sitting in front of a room full of people. There was something I struggled with last time that I knew there was a way to do. I knew I had done it before, and I couldn't remember where it was. So I was wondering, is there a, I mean, this time it'll be different because there's a new interface, so there's a lot of things that change, but sometimes there's like a few new features. Is there a summary somewhere that we put out that says this is what's changed since last time?
Yep, we do that every meeting.
Do that every meeting.
I think that the issue for me anyway is trying to because people feel, my impression is that people feel very comfortable doing video conferencing because they do it pretty much every day now. Most people do in their day jobs, and they underestimate the need to refamiliarize themselves with the MeetEcho tool, and so they don't.
Oh, yeah.
So the challenge, I think, is to simply impress upon people the fact that if they spend 15 minutes of their own time getting refamiliarized with MeetEcho, they will save 15 minutes of their entire working group's time when it comes to getting the meeting going during the IETF meeting, and they will look better and live longer because they have spent those 15 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, that's probably true. I also think that, like, think like the case I had, I needed to swap out a set of slides last minute. So I had uploaded all my slides. I had done all of the things that I would have done in a practice session, but I needed to get those slides refreshed. And I knew there was a way to do it. And I think we need to keep our messages positive where working group chairs are concerned, as opposed to complaining about what they're doing poorly. Because
yeah, no, I agree, and that's exactly why people will have fresher breath and nicer hair if they take 15 minutes to. Yeah, I agree. Definitely need to lead with carrots for sure.
I will also say that the one time there was another time where I was there in plenty of time. I had everything set up, everything was great, and somebody stepped on the power strip and reset everything in the room. So I was like, well, whatever. Anyway, so this is that. Anything else on new participants, Michelle? Nope. Do you have? I was curious. I don't know if you published it somewhere, the number of new participants we had last time, or there was these statistics that were flying around, and I don't know if you have something there.
No, but I can put together just a brief summary and send it to the list.
That would be great. Just to sort of, this is what we had, a summary of the activity. That would be fantastic. Sure. The next thing I would mention is we will have a working group chairs forum. There's been some discussions about how to evolve that forum. They've kind of taken a back seat for a number of reasons. I think we need to do sorry, I'm doing two things at once. Speaking of chairing. Anyway, there will be a working group chairs forum. I don't really have much more to say than that. We don't have a key topic this time, so we're back. We have sort of an ad hoc list of things we could be talking about, but we haven't really narrowed in on what we want to do. I think we want to make better use of the time than we currently are. I get positive feedback at the end of each session, but I think it could be better spent. And then, I don't know, Dirk, if you want to say anything about specific planned outreach activities.
Yeah, sure. With respect to outreach, I think the next main thing that is happening is the IGF, which is in October in Kyoto. And we have various folks in the leadership who will be there in person. There is an IETF town hall that is being planned with the help of ISOP as well. So we are hoping to have good discussion, and this is one of our activities with respect to especially reach out to policy folks and government folks about, and first to educate what the IETF does, and does a level set with respect to expectations that people have with respect to IETF way of working, and give people confidence that the way IETF works and our consensus process has a proven track record of getting things done in the right sort of way. And of course, then invite folks as well to come and participate with respect to various policy activities that are happening in the IETF. So that's the plan. We will most likely have some kind of update from that event during the IETF week, and we can discuss this and have a look back and how to improve this kind of activities as well in future. So that's the plan with respect to the immediate outreach. And I'm sure Greg would have some data with respect to what's happening in Prague. And another thing is, like, Brisbane is a new area. So again, we discussed last time, we are exploring various outreach activities that we can do there. Things are in the motion. You'll come to hear when things get finalized.
Okay. The one other outreach item I'll mention, again, I don't represent the Internet Society, but there will be a policymaker program being organized for Prague. Last I heard, Ryan Polk, who some of you have met, was not going to be there, but Carl Gonberg and a couple others will be there. I can send you contact information if you want, or you can reach out to Olaf Koltman, and I just put my email in the chat for that. So, and that's a policymaker program. It'll be in the European region. We targeted at Europe and Africa. So, all right. Do we have any other activity updates?
Yeah, one. Just this hasn't been generally announced because we just finalized details, but it will be shared shortly. There will be an IETF chairs training live sessions this year. It'll be based on the curriculum that we developed over the last 2 years and has been pretty well received. The difference this time is that we are going to be encouraging anyone in the IETF community who wants to participate. That is, you don't need to be a chair. You just need to be chair curious, I guess is the way to say it. And the reason for that is twofold. The first one is that a lot of the topics that are covered in the chair training are actually pretty generally applicable to how the IETF works, and it provides a good introduction to some of the, especially some of the working group dynamics, how those things are held. And the second reason is that we're hoping that by making this training generally available, people who may be just considering the idea of someday being a chair will participate, and that this introduction to the chair's training will actually help them continue their interest. So again, the goal is to really be as broad as possible in terms of encouraging people to participate. And if anyone on this call has suggestions about how we can actually reach out to participants, I'd love to hear them. Please feel free to share them. So more details will be coming out, and I'll be sure to share them with the EODIR list as well.
Okay.
Greg, is that a virtual training prior to IETF 118?
Yes, it'll be held also during October. It's not actually tied to any particular. It's generally about IETF's group chairing. So it'll be online as the past several editions have been. Yes.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I think that's a great idea. Personally, not that you need my approval, but I think that's an excellent idea. Maybe it makes some of us who are a bit critical of chairs from time to time be a bit more sympathetic when you understand the scale of the task, which I appreciate is not easy, which is a good thing. But going back to the IGF, I don't suppose you could put a link to the IETF session at the IGF in the minutes, because the IGF agenda can be a little challenging to navigate. So just make sure I don't miss that. It'd be a shame to go all the way to Kyoto and miss that session.
Yeah, I have put that in the chat, the link, which will have the date and all the other details as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
Greg, you said it's going to be in October. Is it going to be like, well, it doesn't matter. There'll be an announcement coming out. There's training. That's all I really need to know. Never mind. Lee, I kind of skipped over you. Did you have any updates that you wanted to provide from your perspective?
I'm not entirely sure they're baked, but I will just let you know, as it relates to more 119, Stephanie and I have been doing some outreach to try and secure sponsorship and additional funding for 119. And as part of that, we've been directed to various departments in the Australian government. And also we've been working with the Australian Internet Association to try and figure out whom to engage, both for participation, but also more specifically universities and students that might want to participate either in the hackathon or the meeting. We're running into a little bit of an issue, we've been told, just because apparently RFCs don't count as published works in Australia in the university system. So we're exploring that a little bit more, just because it would be great if students could get the publishing credit that they need working with the IETF. So those conversations have been sort of happening as we've been having sponsorship and fundraising conversations. So it's not so much focused on this upcoming meeting, but the one in Australia. Just as another update, we probably will not do a networking reception as we've done for the last 2-3 meetings in Prague. We're evaluating the format, really. We'll do something going forward, but probably not that. So that won't be happening for Prague. So they're not real strong, tangible updates, but that's just sort of what we've been doing on the fundraising side and how it affects outreach in general. Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah, that's great. I just, if there was something you wanted to tell us, is all I was really looking at. So that's perfect. Go ahead, Andrew. Oh, sorry, Merrick, you're next in the queue.
Yeah, Merrick was first.
Yeah, no. I guess this may be a very basic question, but I think I saw that there isn't a kind of host for the upcoming Prague meeting. And I guess I was wondering whether there is any link there to any of the kind of diversity and inclusion kind of sponsorship funding, or if it's like kind of two separate pots and there isn't a kind of link there or kind of any effect from the lack of host on any of the kind of diversity and inclusion sponsored initiatives. But yeah, I appreciate that might be a basic question.
Go ahead, Lee Berkeley.
Thanks. And anyone else should feel free to chime in as well. That's right. We don't have a host for 118. My understanding is, however, that we have several diversity and inclusivity sponsors. So the good news is things like the child care support and other things will continue thanks to that kind of funding, which is great. And so, in terms of the efforts already underway, I don't know that not having a host for 118 will be detrimental in that sense. I think you'll see it in other ways. There are perks that we throw in that are made possible during the meeting because of having a host and the financial resources they bring. Some of those may not be available, but I don't know that funding would be detrimental to things like travel grants or D&I efforts already underway, because we'd have different sponsors for that. You'll probably notice a difference in not having that extra resources in terms of, the shiny fun things that we can do. They're, cash bars versus open bars, things like that. But no, I don't know that there's a direct correlation between our D&I efforts and having a host. I don't know. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'll just say thanks. Programs like Sisters and some of the other programs that are typically part of it, our D&I efforts, aren't tied to specific meeting hosting. So we don't have a host for IETF 118 at this point, but we do still expect to have all the D&I programs and other kinds of programs that are fall under that. Yeah.
All right, Andrew, were you still in the queue? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just a minute. Sort of jumping ahead to Brisbane, you may well have already reached out to these already, Lee Berkeley, but if not, I could easily connect you to the Australian Network Operators Group if you've not spoken to them already.
Are you talking about AUNOC?
No,
Are you talking about
OSNOG.
OSNOG, yeah. So I think Jay was telling me that there were some conversations, but yeah, this might be too early. But Andrew, if you have any connects, feel free to reach out to me and Jay, and as well as Greg, and let's see if we can do something more better. We were discussing some things with the APNIC folks as well. So one interesting thing that I heard from some folks in the APNIC is, though they are based in Brisbane, they sometimes feel like, APNIC is Asia Pacific, and if the meeting is much more in Southeast Asia or somewhere new, they are much more comfortable rather than when it is very much based in Brisbane. So which was kind of surprising. I was not expecting that answer, but yeah, that's how things works and out. But yeah, do connect us. I think more people that we know, and also not just with respect to host and other things, but even with respect to outreach and a lot other things, they can definitely help. So let's find as many connects as we can.
Yeah, because I've already posted a while back when Brisbane was confirmed, just something on their mailing list to say IETF is coming. But yeah, happy to sort of hook up whoever. So that'd be you, Jay, and you as well, Lee Berkeley, or who?
Yeah, Dhruv or Jay or me, Stephanie from the Secretariat. There's any number of combinations where we can kind of move that forward.
Okay.
All right. So I think what we're going to do in the process of all of this conversation, we sort of combined items 2 and 3. So I think we're going to move right on to 4. And agenda items 4 and 5 both sort of came out of discussions at the plenary. We had hoped that one of the persons who asked to have this on one of these on here was going to be here today, but he was unavailable. So the first one is thinking big about increasing participation and diversity. What would that look like and what would it take? So at this stage, we are brainstorming around ideas to increase participation and diversity in the IETF. If you can harken back to some of the discussion at the plenary. Thoughts? You're muted, Andrew. Are you muted or are you?
Sorry, I'm talking to myself, which is easier.
Yeah.
Since everyone else went quiet, shall I offer up a straw man that other people can then disagree with? So apart from the obvious sort of diversity measures, the sort of gender, ethnicity, etc., all of which is important, and and absolutely we need to do a whole lot better on those sort of measures. To me, I think the sort of fundamental one is diversity of thought, which in my view is sadly lacking in the community. Because there's not enough difference of background of people in terms of things that they do and communities that they come from. So you mentioned about the sort of IGF and the multi-stakeholder model that's obviously prevalent there. In my opinion, well, this is where people can jump on me and disagree, it's completely lacking in the IETF. And that's a major problem because you get better standards with a more diverse community. I've said before, I think the lack of the end user community is a huge flaw, and needs to be fixed because we're making standards that the end user community might care little about or might think are completely ridiculous, and we don't always bother to ask them. So diversity of thought as well as just improvements in diversity generally, to sort of indirectly answer your question, Karen, but hopefully to offer up something that other people can disagree with and have a discussion about.
Push back a little bit on that, because you have a specific item in mind, right? And that is currently very much a minority view of the IETF, and saying that you now want to push a diversity system in general with basically your hobby horse is a little bit disingenuous. I think we do actually try to let everybody speak their mind, and the diversity issue is really about getting new groups of minority people come to us, and not so much based on what they think, specifically on some topics that concern me.
I'm wondering, I actually have a question about this diversity, not in particular, maybe slightly in response to your comments, Andrew, but in a little different direction perhaps, and I'd be interested to hear what other people think. So part of what I heard you say is that the backgrounds of participants, sort of what they're coming from, where they're coming from, is part of the one of the axes of diversities that we're interested in, or we should think about, and not necessarily, for example, geographic diversity, which often comes up because we hold physical meetings, and so people are interested in trying to get participation from different geographies. In terms of backgrounds, are you thinking, you mentioned end users, but are you also including in that things like the network operator community, or other kinds of industries? Is that part of what you're thinking about?
Yeah, okay. So to expand a little, without trying to go too far, yes, that's part of it, but it's also, if you have a bunch of people from different geographies, I think, by the way, I think that's really important to improve the geographic diversity. But if you've got a bunch of, I'll pick on a company just at random, so just to illustrate the point. If you've got a bunch of people from, say, I know, Google, from lots of different countries, that's useful perhaps on one level, but they're all Google employees, so that's not as diverse as having people with completely different backgrounds in those geographies. So that's what I'm saying. If you've got a bunch of people fundamentally doing the same job from different countries, that's a start, but it's still pretty one-dimensional diversity. I've seen videos of companies talking about diversity, and they show that their gender diversity, their board is exactly 50-50. Fantastic. But then when you hear the individual speak, it's like you've got, say, 15 clones. So, well done, but you've got no diversity of thought. So you need to have those different backgrounds, those different experiences, not just the sort of traditional axes, in my view, to have a properly diverse community, to challenge accepted wisdom on different things. And to Paul's point, I was deliberately not alluding to any specific topic, but I passionately think that the IETF will produce better standards if it's more diverse than it is, and on the more traditional measure, to be less diverse on gender than, say, the tech sector as a whole is appallingly bad. And given that this tech sector is not exactly a champion of diversity to start with, so there's so much that needs to be done.
Just Andrew, one tiny point, especially from somebody who is from a region where we don't see anyone or less people. I think, I would kind of argue that that's not all people working for the same company have the same background. And we are also end users at the end of the day. So we do bring in those experiences as well when we come and participate in the IETF. And in IETF, as we say, that we wear multiple hats. And that's true. Sometimes I am representing my organizations or my country, or even IETF and IAB in some ways. So it's not as black and white, but Nobody can say that, like, more diversity is bad. That's never going to be a thing. Of course, we would like more and more diversity, but I would not call it so black and white, maybe, as maybe how you
that's
put
fair.
it.
I was deliberately exaggerating to sort of make a point, but that's fair. And in case I didn't answer Greg's point, yeah, the different sort of roles I think is also important. So you mentioned network operators. Yeah, I think that would be useful. I think end user companies, think of enterprises. I've said before, I think having some CISOs involved, think about Paul's area, would be really useful to give a sort of practitioner view on security practices. It would be helpful, and so on. You could extrapolate that in lots of different directions.
The one thing on the, I think to some extent the different backgrounds, the different roles that you come from does play a part. I don't know how. I think we're driven heavily right now to measure things and to measure and to get numbers, and I think that's where it's a little bit more challenging to get numbers. I mean, you can look at the gender diversity, but I don't know that you can get at the some of those other axes of diversity that contribute. The other thought on gender diversity, and I know this, I think it's important. Obviously, I think it's very important to have gender diversity. The one thing that makes me a tad uncomfortable when we compare ourselves to the tech industry is that I think if you look at different fields of engineering, or you look at different parts of like electrical engineering and computer engineering, you see some of the more of the hardware. I think when we say the tech industry, that's a big bubble. The IETF is not the whole vertical area of the tech industry. It's really sort of like the lower half, and then there's like the web and all of these things that are above it. And I feel like if you look at the genders that tend to migrate towards hardware design versus the ones that tend to migrate towards, I mean, this is rash generalizations, but I've been on an industrial advisory board for an electrical engineering department for years and years and years, and we keep discussing this, and I think we're being a tad I know this is terribly unpopular to say. I think we're being a tad unfair by just comparing the gender diversity of the IETF with the tech industry, because I think if you combine IEEE and IETF and W3C, if you took that set of people and then you compared them to tech industry, then maybe you'd get a better representation of the industry.
But I suppose however you look at it, Karen, it's very skewed.
It is skewed, but I've been doing time synchronization stuff in the IEEE for years, and I can tell you, like, the time synchronization group is almost exclusively male, and it has, I won't say it has none of the cultural issues of the IETF, but it's a warm, friendly, welcoming group of people. It's a small community, but it's just there's not that many women doing that work. And so if there's not that many women doing that work, it's hard to get them to participate in the standards to develop it. So anyway, we are at a quarter till. So Greg asks in the chat, people have suggestions about the particular axes that we haven't talked about yet. I think we've talked about a couple of them. I don't know if, I think they've been mentioned in various places. So, but anyway. So basically we've said, yes, we need to do diversity, and we're not exactly sure what diversity means. So do we have any concrete suggestions? Excellent. Thanks, Audrey.
At first, I wasn't even sure I should be here because I'm, just listening in on the meeting for this subject. But I'm Audrey, in case my name is there. And it's a problem that in other organizations I'm involved in, we're constantly talking about. And the whole issue that came up at the beginning with Andrew of, which diversity are we talking about, along which axis are we talking about, is a constant discussion that we're into, saying, well, which diversity is really the most important diversity? I think what you've said a lot about is having tasks. For example, if the developing of protocols is, yes, as you said, mostly it's sequestered almost by gender. But if for example the IETF were to do more things like, and this is where you bring in the users, the impact of the protocol that we're developing, the impact of the architectural, modalities and methods and directions we're taking, and having people do that kind of sort of second order work, then you might see it broader. I think the other thing, it's funny, I don't think of the IETF as a multi-stakeholder organization, because multi-stakeholder usually means multi-stakeholder groupism. I think of the IETF basically as in any stakeholder group. And in that, you basically find that when your stakeholder mix is based on grouping of peoples, which IETF pretty much assiduously avoids unless it's by area, it's hard then to reach out for a few more of those, So the other place that I found sometimes, but really I was hoping to come and figure out all kinds of cool things you were doing for diversity so that I could steal them and take them elsewhere. So that was really my intent for being here, and not to talk about other things. But it's also when doing specific outreaches. Boy, we could really use an expert from such and such. It happens in ICANN a lot when we're dealing with script usage and language usage and domain names with different script. Then we can say, oh, we really need someone that knows that script. Can we go find one and pull them in? And so I don't know if there's a direct correlation in IETF. Mentioned having users group, used to have one way back when, but that didn't seem to last into current days. So I think you can, and I think you are. I mean, I have been, since I got less involved with IETF than I had been, in my prehistory, and you sort of take a look and say, wow, it is a lot more diverse now than 10 years ago. So there is that sort of progressive. Each year, it doesn't look like it gets any better, but if you take sort of a bigger hop, and I'll stop now. So, but thank you. I really, really just wanted to listen and figure out how far you all had gotten, and so on. I'm still IETF, but I haven't spent much time there in the last 6 years.
Yeah, I do think you're right about the kind of work that we do. And I remember years ago, there was discussions about APIs, and folks are like, well, the IETF doesn't do APIs. I mean, I think that's sort of like one of those areas where if your work is this, then you're just drawing the people that are doing that work. But that's appropriate as well. Go ahead, somebody who just joined the queue. Lee Berkeley.
Thanks. Talking about tasks, I'm wondering if, we spend a lot of time looking at the sort of the big picture, but the comment about, taking the tasks and stealing them, it made me think, maybe we need to bring this down to the micro level a little bit. And if we want to move the needle, think about some very specific tasks that are obtainable and doable and not so complex and stressful and time consuming. So just as a little example, in looking for sponsorship and partnerships for Brisbane, Stephanie and I have been talking with Narelle Clark at the Australian Internet Association. They have a sisters program. So as that talk continues, one of the things we mentioned to her in passing was, at some point, we'd love to hook up your sisters group with our sisters group just to get people talking. That's a pretty easy task. but it's one that in theory, maybe it could make some connects. Maybe it could help, even if it brings in one or two, women to the IETF or introduces them that haven't been exposed before. It's something that is an accomplishment in doing, even if it's a slight one. And maybe we could look at a couple of universities where we have strong affiliations and see if in their engineering departments or whatever, computer science departments, they have women affinity groups, and maybe do a little outreach there. Again, nothing heavy lifting, but move the needle that way. And if we have some success, then great, we continue it. And if we find that it's not moving the needle enough, or it's not being well received, or whatever the dynamic is, then maybe we stop. But maybe in looking at the big picture, we could also just try some micro tasks to see if it gets us anywhere.
Yeah. I think one of the things that would be interesting is what those micro tasks would be. So some brainstorming there would be really helpful. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. That was really nice what you said. And even taking some examples of past outreach activities that we have done, it's always good to look at multiple axes. Like even when we were doing educational outreach and I was working with one university in India, we specifically said that yes, we are doing an educational outreach, but I would want to make sure that there are enough women participants in the classrooms and even as the speakers. And the same thing what you are suggesting with respect to the geographical outreach in Australia, we can continue to think in different axes and bring diversity across all groups. So it shouldn't be look at this is geographic diversity, this is gender diversity. No, they're all interlinked, and we should try to do them together. Thanks.
Yeah. Paul?
I just also want to comment on the fact that for working group chairs, it actually over the board, people are really trying to make them more diverse. Both the ADs are putting in efforts, but even chairs themselves. I have chairs who say like, I would like to resign from this working group. So once you find a diverse chair, let me know, and then I will resign. So they're also trying to actually really steer this and help in trying to get our chairs to be much more diverse. But it's a really hard task. I for one have a working group that might be closing down that has a diverse chair, and I really want to try and keep that chair in another working group. But we're at the the top of the pyramid of like all these previous selections and biases that have happened, right? And it's really hard for us on our own to change that, and we should definitely try to do as much as we can. But I just want to bring up like we are doing some things that might not be as visible. At least we're trying.
Merrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about kind of like, I guess, the value of measurement in all of these things. And I know that kind of there are questions in the post-meeting survey that get to kind of like the experience of different people of the meeting. But yeah, I guess I was kind of thinking about measurement more qualitatively, and I guess linking that to Drew, what you were saying about the kind of IETF session at the IGF coming up. And I sat in on the IETF kind of presentation at RIPE earlier this year with the kind of network operator community. And I think that like, I guess that could be a really useful data point in terms of seeing how those communities kind of perceive the IETF and kind of any potential challenges that they see in being more fully involved, and making sure that that is fed back. I'm sure that that process is kind of happening, and it does kind of make an impression, but just wondering if there's any way to kind of formalize that a bit more in terms of, oh, here are the kind of questions, or like here were the kind of challenges raised that we could kind of think about as a kind of qualitative data point, to think about some of those external communities, whether it's other kind of standards organizations or network operators or internet governance as well, just to kind of build a better picture, I guess. And so, yeah, I guess that's maybe something about just collecting the info and kind of feeding it in, and using it to inform the kind of existing activities and programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's excellent idea. In fact, as a part of IAB outreach coordinator, this is one of the action item that I have kept for myself. That after the events, we try to do a little bit of measurement. Right now, it's anecdotal. We decided that let's start with anecdotal data, that what feedback that we get out of the event, and at a later stage, once we have something, we can maybe think about doing surveys, and of course fitting into what works well in the community that we are going into, what is the culture in that community of getting feedback. So trying to link the two, starting with anecdotal, and let's see where we go. So that's the short answer. Thank you.
All right. I know Greg's and Andrew in the queue. We've got 5 minutes left, so we probably need to be wrapping this up.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. You could practice closing the queue if you wanted to use a
Hi.
Medico feature that someone said I'll use. Just to say that I think this is a persistent challenge for the IETF, which is to get to understand what people who are not in the IETF are perceiving or thinking about the IETF. So this is definitely something that comes up as a general case. One of the things that we did when we redesigned the IETF website was actually, this was about 6 or 7 years ago now, is we did interviews of people who were non-participants and who were not even potential participants, but just non-participants. They were never going to participate. And we got some really interesting insights. And that might be something we consider doing in another forum to help us understand how the IETF is perceived outside of the people who already come to the IETF.
Andrew?
Two brief points. One is, since I forgot to mention it, but when we didn't really have time in the last meeting, I think there's a lot of really good learning points in Corinne Cath-Speth's PhD thesis on the culture of the IETF, which at least bear reading and thinking about on the general cultural sort of issues. And she does touch on some things which affect diversity as well, in my view. So I think that's worth looking at. And it's quite an easy read. I managed to read it en route from London to San Francisco. It was about the right plane length to read the report. And then secondly, just to agree with Marik's point, in the spirit of I do believe you get what you measure. Jay gives really excellent presentation at the IETF plenary, which tells us about various things, bring out some of the data that the LLC team collect, and that we generally the community ignores, even though they studiously collect it. I wonder if they could be encouraged to maybe expand his presentation slightly to show the trends on some of whatever we agree are the right diversity measures. How are we doing on diversity measures, say over 5 years? Is it improving or getting worse, and so on? Geography, etc. Because I think Avery's point was really well made, that it's a lot better now than it was. I'm sure that's true, and perhaps looking at we're at least heading in the right direction, even if it's not very good, will be better than it's not very good.
All right. So we're going to wrap up this call. A couple of the last two agenda items were put here as sort of brainstorming activities, diversity and culture. We didn't really get to culture. We touched on it a little bit. I think I'd strongly encourage people to think about it and post to the mailing list. Also, I think it was Lee Berkeley who said, somebody said the term, it was like micro efforts or micro something, but like little small things that we could try and do. So I think any suggestions for those would be great. I would also like to remind folks that the EODIR is about coordinating activities that other folks are doing. So it would be really helpful if you were to come here and say, I have an idea, we should do this, and I am happy to do it. So that'll help us with that part of it. And the final thing, I really did want to reinforce what Avery said about it. I do think the IETF is better both culturally and from a diversity perspective now than it was 10 years ago. And I think as we're getting more and more aware of it, we are talking about it more, and a lot of conversations are of the nature of the sky is falling, and oh my goodness, it's everything's falling to pieces. But I do think we're improving. I think we just need to continue that improvement, and it's not going to change overnight. So be nice to each other. That's the first step in improving the culture. So does anybody have any last second things? Oh, look, top of the hour. Thank you all for coming, and we will go from here. Yay, everybody. It's just you and me, Michelle.
I know I have to hop on another call, but I thought you would appreciate my shirt. Oh, are you gone?